welcome to OmniDog Live, OmniDog's Vault Live, Baturdays in the Batcave with my co-host Taylor Brown. Taylor, how's it going?
I'm doing great, Jess. How are you?
Good, good. Welcome to all the OmniDogs and OmniKittens. We are doing the uneven legacy of Frank Miller today. But before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about just Batman in general. We are both huge Batman fans, and we don't mean this episode as any type of criticism of Batman or Frank Miller, just kind of a study of the history of Batman and what the writer's legacy is and has been on Batman.
That's right. Yeah, the main reason why I want to talk about this, again, like echoing what you said, isn't to crap on Frank Miller and make him and make everyone hate him or anything, because I think his Batman legacy is so interesting and fascinating because arguably he only created 8 issues of Batman that were excellent. And he created a lot of issues of Batman which are not excellent and are actually very poor. Yet he is on the Mount Rushmore of Batman creators, and he is remembered and thought of as one of the most important comic creators of all time.
Right.
Even though he only created really 8 good issues of Batman.
Right. And so since this is about Batman, we're not going to be talking about Sin City or 300 or anything like that. We're strictly keeping it to Batman.
Right. But I think we'll find out in this chat that somewhere in the mid to late 90s, Frank Miller really dropped off a cliff, and he never really recovered. I'm not really sure what happened to him, and you can see that in his Batman works and his other independent works as well.
Right. Right. I have not. I will cop to the fact that I own but have not read Master Race. And I had a chance to read it before this review, and I just didn't get a chance. And I still want to read it, but I just did not get the chance to do it.
I also didn't encourage you to read it either.
Yeah, I know. You weren't the best. You weren't the best at that.
Yeah. Well, we'll get into my thoughts on Master Race more, but that's kind of a sneak preview of my thoughts about it. I encourage you not to read it because it wasn't that important in my estimation.
Not that important. That's
I want to hear the chat's thoughts on that book later on, because maybe they'll disagree with me. We'll see. Because I've heard a lot of back and forth on the Master Race.
And that is the book that was a group effort book.
Yes, that was written by Azzarello, Brian Azzarello, and Frank Miller. But I think Brian Azzarello pretty much did a majority of the work. You can kind of tell by the writing style. And it's drawn by Andy Kubert, who really tries to mimic a 1986 Frank Miller style to some good effect. But also the backup features are drawn by Frank Miller, and it's just no good.
Really?
The backup stories do not look good, unfortunately. It has one of the worst pictures of Superman I've ever seen, which I'll show later on today. I don't have it physically. I didn't buy it. I read it on Hoopla this past week, and I wasn't really a fan, to be honest.
Yeah, Hoopla. That's got to be my goal this week, is to get Hoopla.
Well, it makes me, I don't get as angry whenever I read comics I don't like because I didn't pay for it.
Yeah.
If I had to pay for that book, I'd be really annoyed.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I have to go to another county over to get Hoopla.
Oh, really? You have to go to another library and get another library account?
Yeah, my county does not carry Hoopla, but they have reciprocal with another county, and so I've been encouraged by somebody to, I think it's Travis Gilmer, who says he's going to bug me forever until I get a Hoopla account. So
I think it's really worth it. Also, the interesting thing about Hoopla, it depends on the library. You can get a certain number of books depending on the library. Like my library has 10
Yeah.
a month. I've heard some people say 2 or 3. So it really depends on the library.
Well, it would be good because I'm running out of space. And by
Right.
running out of space, I mean I'm out of space. So I really do need I really do need a uh, solution.
Well, I saw your tour the other day of your statues, and I was like, wow, he has a lot of stuff jammed into that basement.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
do.
that pinball machine and everything else. It's like, wow, I can't imagine him being able to fit much more.
Yeah, no, and the library portion is pretty much full. Um, and my options are I have to go digital or I have to purge. And I've
Right.
started the purging anyway because we're going to be downsizing here in 2 to 3 years since my wife's retiring. So I really do have to purge, and I've got to downsize it to stuff that I am going to reread.
Right.
And so um,
And
I'm
today there are 2 books you'll reread, and several books you will not be rereading. I imagine.
as a matter of fact, I don't even own the books. Well, I do own the one book. You already mentioned it in the chat. I have that book. And I mean, I can highlight it, and I have to say, I didn't hate it. As a matter of fact, it's I think it's the most I've liked JR's work. I've felt.
Yeah, we'll get into the
Uh,
Last Crusade more later
yeah,
on, but I think it's decent. It's not. I wouldn't say it's bad by any stretch of the imagination.
no, um, right.
Well, do you want to start with The Dark Knight Returns?
Yeah,
Start
sure.
at the beginning. So I kind of wanted to flip the script this week and kind of interview you a little bit about Dark Knight Returns in year one, especially because they both came out before I was born. So I can't really. Dark Knight Strikes Again came out in 1986, which is 4 years before I was born.
Okay.
So I can't really comment on the impact of it initially. I can comment on the impact of it now and how it's impacted all the Bat books since then. But I would like to hear a little bit about your experience picking it up off the stand in 1986. So I'm going to turn it over to you and hear
Okay.
what you have to say.
Um, I will just give a brief history of my life as a Batman reader. I started as a 6-year-old in 1965. Starting Batman and Detective were the first comics that I liked. So, and then what everybody refers to now as Batman 66 showed up on television. So, the entire United States started flipping out about Batman. And so then I really got into Batman. Batman comics at that time were more, they weren't goofy, but they were more detective oriented. And he was more of a problem solver with groups like the Grasshopper Gang and Blockbuster. He was they were one and done stories. You didn't have any 3-part stories or anything. I remember an issue where Alfred became the outsider. Batman was beaten up, could lose a fight regularly. There was no Bat God at that time. So throughout the 60s, mid 60s, we were coming off the 50s where it was way goofy Batman with Batmite and Bathound. So I was reading, so that was detective kind of Batman. Then towards the late 60s, early 70s, you had Neil Adams and Dennis O'Neil turn them darker, a little more serious, drawn much differently. And so that's when I really started to devour Batman. And I would say that went on for a couple of years, 2, 3, 4 years. But then I noticed maybe in the mid 70s, 75, 76, sort of the Bronze Age Batman, the late period, mid-period Bronze Age Batman, I specifically remember the Jim Aparo art, which was great, but Batman started appearing during the day, like walking the streets during the day, noticing the pretty girls and stuff. And he was like an ambassador of goodwill or something. I don't know. He was not dark. He was not the driven Dark Knight. Sorry, I shouldn't even use that Dark Knight term yet. He was not
the Cape Crusader.
Yeah, he wasn't the goofy Adam West guy, but he wasn't the Ra's al Ghul fighting.
With his chest hair out.
Yeah, yeah.
That was a big deal when it happened, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Batman, the chest hair.
Sure. Yeah, because it showed that he was human.
Right.
Right.
Batman didn't shave his chest in the shower.
Right. Exactly.
Or Alfred didn't shave it for him in the Batcave.
So it started to lose its edge for me, and I think comic books sort of started to lose their edge for me sort of around 1975, 76. Of course, this was a period of time when girls were actually saying hi back to me when I said hi to them. And so I started to lose interest in comics. The 75 through 84-ish, I don't know. That was kind of a lost period of comic books. I think they just weren't that interesting. The Bronze Age JLA book is not a book I'm going to get if it ever gets reprinted, if it ever does see print, because those stories just were not interesting to me. And comics, I mean, those Dennis O'Neil, Neil Adams book had an edge to them. They were interesting and had an edge and really made Batman interesting. And he lost that edge badly in the late 70s. Walking around during the day and in his costume, noticing, as I said, saying what a beautiful day it was. So I had just totally lost touch with comics, and I was living in LA around 85, 86. And I read an article in the LA Times that talked about this new comic book, The Dark Knight, and how Frank Miller, who I had never heard of before, and DC had unleashed Batman and had let him become an avenging angel type of Clint Eastwood, Charles Bronson type of Death Wish character who was kicking ass and taking no names. He was there to kick ass and chew bubblegum, and he was all out of bubblegum, as they say in the movie Them. And he was different, where he was dishing out the punishment and not holding back. And I was like, well, this sounds interesting. This sounds like a new type of Batman. So I was in LA looking for a job at the time, and I just looked in the phone book for a comic book store. And I went there, and little did I know that it had swept the comic book industry at the time. I was out of it, and the comic book guy that I went to already had it up on the first printing up on the board. The back of the back of the cashier thing is at $25, and I said,
"Wow."
I said, I'm here to ask about Dark Knight Returns, and he or not Dark Knight Returns. Yeah, wait, Dark Knight Returns. And he said, well, it's $25. And I said, oh gosh, that's disappointing.
That's the first issue.
Yeah.
So only the first issue had been out at this point.
Yeah, and I think it was $5 and $4.95 or something, and it was in a new format. It was in a brand new format that I had never seen before. Sorry?
The Prestige format.
Yeah, which I had never seen before. All I had ever seen was like 80-page giants and floppies. So I was like, oh, wow, that's kind of expensive. I have had been out of comic books for a long time, and I was looking forward to getting back into them. And he said, "Oh yeah, well, you can change my mind if you can answer some questions about Batman." I said, "Okay." And I am not kidding. For the next 10 minutes, I sat there and answered questions about I had to answer questions about Ace the Bat Hound and Batmite and who was the first Batwoman, like Kathy Kane. Thank God I was such a Batman fan because he was pulling stuff from the 50s, like Kathy Kane and the original Batgirl, whose name escapes me now, but I knew it back then. It was Kathy Kane's niece, and he was asking me about the hooded hangman from the 60s, all these obscure questions. And he goes, "Okay, I'll let you have it for $7." And I go, "Okay, thank you."
Wow. Sounds like he had a lot of time on his hands and the store wasn't that full.
I was the only one there. It was like 11 in the morning.
You're probably like entertainment value to him,
I
making you squirm.
he had me squirming, but it was also kind of fun. I was like, okay, like halfway through, I was answering questions, and he was like, I think we were having fun with each other at that point because I was determined to get this book. Because back then, $25 for a $5 book, that's a lot of money,
Yeah.
especially because I was still looking for a job at that point. And so, but I wanted to read what was so great about this book. And I guess at that point it had already been out for a month and the comic book industry was, going goofy over it. So I took it home and I read it. And I had never read anything like it before. I mean, I'm coming off years of reading about Batmite, the Grasshopper Gang, freaking, uh, you know, Joker crimes, uh, where he's got Junior Joker. There was like a little mini version Joker that he had, part of him, and Penguin and Catwoman and Batman 66, and it was meaningless. And I read this book and I was utterly shocked at it. I mean, there's a point in it where I'm pretty sure Batman pulls the trigger and blows away one of these mutants that has a hostage. Um,
Yeah, that does.
it
He
look,
also he also showed that in the Batman v Superman. Remember, they kind of play off of that.
yeah, I'm
Yeah, right
pretty sure
here.
he.
You
Wait,
see
let me
that
highlight you just a sec.
right here? He busts in and he shoots right there at
Yeah,
the
I'm
bottom.
I'm pretty sure right in that upper panel there, right on that right hand page,
Yeah, right there.
that implies that he's been shot.
Yeah, right there.
Yeah, right there. To me, that looks like a splat. And he says, "I believe you." And I mean, he tears through these criminals. And but it's not. But the writing is, it's not. Let me think how to say
I like
this.
this. I like this part when he's out in his first night back and he kicks that guy really hard. Remember that
Yeah.
right here? And then the police officer says, "You're under arrest, mister. You've crippled that man." And Batman says, "He's young. He'll probably walk again. But he'll stay scared, won't you, punk?"
Right.
That's like you never saw that before in any Batman book. Batman being that big of a just hard case, just
Oh,
really letting people
I mean,
have it.
he's out to cripple. Yeah, he's out to cripple these guys. He's out to absolutely maim and smear them on the pavement. But it's not written. I mean, it's really well written. I mean, the dialogue and the the dialogue is extremely well written. It's extremely, and it takes into account the fact that he's like 60 years old. He's kept in shape. He's kept in shape. Um, he's got Jason Todd on his mind still. Um, he's still got um, the body of a 60-year-old, but the mind and the sharpness and acuity of a 35-year-old, which a lot of us that are 60 think we do. I'm certainly not in the shape Batman is, but I think like I thought at 35.
And it's a lot of fun seeing Alfred like giving him a deep massage after a long night of crime fighting.
Yeah, and Alfred continues to give him shit throughout the whole thing.
Like Alfred usually does, but even more so as an old man.
Right. Um, so as I'm reading this, I just can't believe it. It's like the dust has been brushed from my eyes, and I'm seeing a brand new thing. It is something I've never seen before, and he's um he's taking on the bad guys, but he also realizes all the lives that have been lost because he let the Joker live is
Mm,
what I saw, what I read in there,
right.
and which has always bothered me. Um, the whole idea of that, and then but then you're also getting in there the psychosocio commentary that runs through it on the television, um, with the sociologists and the psychosociologists or whatever they are, that wasn't done before, with Harvey Dent, and then with the commentators constantly talking throughout about politics, about the right or wrong of Batman, whether or not he's causing the problems himself, whether or not these criminals can be rehabilitated, whether it's right or wrong that Batman's allowed to be out there, whether it's right or wrong, his methods are right or wrong, and that's a constant undercurrent. Is are these television shows, these comments, and they're not just. I mean, they're really well thought out comments. So Frank Miller really did his homework writing these snippets from these sociologists and psychologists about the underpinnings of Batman's methods and whether or not he was the cause of the crime, or the criminals were. And I thought that was an amazing kind of commentary that was going on at the time, because I had never seen that before either. Anybody questioning Batman's methods.
And you can really tell what Frank Miller's opinion is during those times. He obviously paints these newscasters and sociologists as incorrect. Like he really kind of, especially the doctor who
Yeah,
deals with the Joker. Like he thinks the Joker is just a misunderstood, twisted man who was
sure.
messed up by Batman. And you can just tell Frank Miller's kind of twisting the knife into certain people in our
Right,
society, in our culture.
right. Yeah, you that is an early sign of Frank Miller writing his opinions into the book,
Right.
which definitely happens a lot more frequently. Um, but I can't stress the importance of the fact that it was it had never been seen before, and it was more than a breath of fresh air. It was like an injection of something into a character that had grown old and stale and reinvigorated him up until now. I mean, it reinvented him and reinvigorated him up until now. Uh, and then there were three more books, that added on to the story, that, with Kelly joining him, and the fight with Superman, and the Joker, and the fact that with the mutants. Oh well, wait. There's one great line that I love, um, that is just classic Frank Miller, where where he gets all the mutants in the dump, and corrals them all up, and gets the mutant leader who had previously beaten him, and gets the mutant leader lets him escape from jail into the mud pit. And he says, "You don't get it. You don't get it, boy. This isn't a mud hole. It's an operating table. And I'm the surgeon." Just cranking down on him, and I'm the surgeon. I just love that. As he beats him down and disrespects him, and
is that your favorite moment of the book?
it might be. I highlighted it.
That's up there for me.
It is, and I mean, he humiliates him, and then they become the Sons of Batman, like right there at that moment.
I love this page right here with Batman. Look how happy he is to fight the mutant leader.
Yeah,
like he has this
that's a famous page.
Sense of glee. Like, I love that I get to fight this jerk.
Yeah,
I'm gonna destroy him, even though he loses that first fight.
Right.
I like how Frank Miller really shows that Bruce loves being Batman, even though he won't admit it. This is what his life's all about. His life's all about breaking criminals' faces and fulfilling that vow to his parents. And he gets a twisted sense of glee out of it. And he finally kind of lets himself go as an old man. I think as a younger man, Bruce kind of restrains it and acts like he hates it, but he really does love it. And I really love how Frank Miller portrayed Batman as like this inner force inside of Bruce. He can't help but let it out. Like, remember whenever he hears that inner voice and he sees Alfred, and Alfred's like, "Sir, where'd your mustache go?"
Yeah.
And he shaved it because it was Batman like pushing him to get that cowl back on.
And he was like, when he touched it, he was like, "Oh."
He didn't even realize it.
He
it was
didn't
like
even
almost like
realize
he couldn't. And I love this. He has had a lot of great splash pages. I love this page too. It's his first night back, and again,
that's a famous.
So happy, and he's just talking about it. He says, "I'm a man of 30 or 20 again. The rain on my chest is a baptism. I'm born again."
Right.
And he's just like, all those years he was retired, it's almost like he was dead.
Right.
I'm back to life again. I'm finally who I'm supposed to be. Retirement is not for me. I'd rather die than go back to that.
Right. And I had almost forgotten all the themes they explore in the rest of the books, because they go deep into a lot of themes in the rest of the books. We don't necessarily have to cover everything, but I mean, they, with Superman and the atomic weapons and where the mutant leaders got his weapons. But I mean, he covers an awful lot of, there's an awful lot of layering going on. There's an awful lot of topics, but I think once you get past the fact, it's not, the rest of these books are interesting, and the rest of the books are really interesting and fun, but you can't get the same sense of excitement and astonishment as that first book did to me, when I was like, this is the most amazing thing I have ever read. It's like when I finally read when I finally collected the same year all 12 issues of Watchmen and read those all together too, and said, what are comic books doing? What is happening here? These are things I really, and that's when I got back into, and I haven't gotten back out of since, comic books.
You'd really ask yourself, if it wasn't for 1986 and Watchmen and Dark Knight Returns, would any of us actually be comic book fans today? I don't know.
That is a good question, because then in 1988, Sandman came out, and then in 89, I think Hellblazer came out, and those were the other two that got their hooks into me. And that's when I was like, that's when I was in for good. Really.
I think that Frank Miller and Alan Moore kind of did a combined kick to the comic book door, and everybody else just rushed in after them.
I think you're exactly right. Yeah, you're exactly right.
And so I want to talk a little bit about some of our other favorite moments from this book. I might have a strange favorite moment from this book. I don't know why. It always makes me laugh every time I read it. Remember whenever the Joker's dead and the cops are coming into the Tunnel of Love?
Yeah.
I love the moment where Batman's talking to him. He's talking to himself, and he says, "I waste 1 second with a goodbye," and he spits on the Joker's face. I just love it. I don't know why I love that moment. It's not really even a Batman moment. Normally, Batman wouldn't do that. I just love that. It's just so, I don't know, it's so over the top. And again, it's just really symptomatic of this book that it's just over the top. It's much more than you're expecting. I kind of equate Dark Knight Returns with Unforgiven. You ever seen the movie Unforgiven?
Oh yeah,
Like,
yeah.
how many Westerns had you seen by that point when that movie came out? Probably hundreds. But it just turned it on its head and showed you how much better a Western can actually be. And it's
Right.
the same with Dark Knight Returns. Like you said, you read hundreds of Batman issues, but Dark Knight Returns finally showed you how great Batman can be and how dark he can be and how much he can actually tell us about our time and ourselves. And I think this book just really turned Batman on its head and really just surprised a lot of people.
Yeah, and it's not only, and it's not the violence, but it's the way it was written. It was, and I have more to say about his style when we get to year one, but it was just the way it was written was just so almost prose like and so descriptive, but the dialogue just flowed so smoothly, and um, it was just, I thought the dialogue just was really, really just organic and flowed and just made so much sense that it was. I just found it to be remarkable.
Right. Do you have any other favorite moments you want to mention before we move on?
I think the mud one was, I probably do, but I think the mud one was my favorite one.
I'd be remiss not to talk about this final fight scene with Batman and Superman.
Yeah.
This is definitely, I don't know, that Joker moment's a small moment, but this is probably my favorite overall. I just love this fight scene. It's just it's so interesting and it's so well choreographed. I just love how he incorporates Green Arrow into it.
Yeah, I know.
Night Arrow,
Balding Oliver Queen.
because they kind of intimate that Superman either rips off Green Arrow's arm or lasers it off with his
Yeah.
eyes because he wouldn't give up like Batman wouldn't give up. And so he recruits Ollie to come back and help him take down Superman. Well, let me ask you, Jess, one question I do have about this book, and one critique I do have is its portrayal of Superman. That Superman is very much a puppet of the government, a corporate stooge, and he's not really a free-thinking individual. And I forgive it because it's kind of an Elseworlds tale. It's not in
Right.
continuity. So I let that go. But what do you think about that? I think you're a bigger Superman fan than even I am. So maybe you
Yeah.
have some thoughts about that.
He's always had that knock against him that he's the big blue Boy Scout and that he believes in, um, the justice for all. Unfortunately, I can sort of see, I don't disagree with it. I do see him, I don't think of him as being the rebel that Batman is. I see him more of a follower than a leader,
Right.
which is unfortunate because I and I think that's because he realizes he's so powerful that he doesn't want the um, responsibility. He's too worried about the responsibility of being a leader that he wants, because he's too afraid of, if he turned into some type of uh, you know uh, if he took things too far with his superpowers. I think he'd rather take orders from somebody else, some other government that he perceives as good, rather than try and make his own decisions on what's good. I don't know. It's just, I I I think his portrayal is unfortunately probably spot on. And I kind of say that with a heavy heart because I wish he was more of a risk taker.
I just love when he's fighting him, and Superman can see Bruce's heart and see it beating. He's like, Bruce, your heart, you're gonna have a heart attack. Like, stop. Like, Clark still, as the Boy Scouts, he's fighting Batman. He's like, you're gonna kill yourself by doing this. And I just love where Batman has this inner monologue, and he's saying, "You're a joke. I want you to remember, Clark, in all the years to come, in your most private moments. I want you to remember my hand at your throat. I want you to remember the one man who beat you." I just love that. Then he dies.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm really spoiling. I mean, who hasn't read it at this point? But
oh my gosh.
If you haven't read it, I'm really sorry, but I just spoiled it. But actually, Batman doesn't die. He's pretending to die, and they're at the gravesite, and Superman hears the beat.
Yeah.
He looks at Carrie Kelly, and she's like, "Oh crap!" And then he winks at her and walks away.
That is a great moment.
And I just love the bookends to this book. How it's the beginning. He's racing that car, and he's pushing it to its limits. He almost kills himself, and he says, "This would be a good death."
Mm-hmm.
And at the end, he's underground with all the sons of Batman and Carrie Kelly recreating the Batcave, and he says, "This is a good life." And
that's an excellent
I
observation.
love that bookend.
Yeah.
I think it's a man who is struggling with depression, a man who is struggling with, I just want my life to be meaningful.
Exactly.
Maybe the death can be meaningful, but he's like, no, actually, most important thing is that I make my life meaningful. And that's important for all of us.
Yeah.
So how many of us struggle with depression or anxiety or with our lives? And we're like, no, I need to work towards having a meaningful life that impacts other people.
Right.
So I think that really impacts
me on
a personal level.
Very good observation. Very good.
Thank you.
So then the next year follows it up with something I feel like I may have liked even better.
Okay, that was a question I was going to ask you. let me just ask you now. Do you like Year One more than Dark Knight Returns?
Well, as far as storytelling goes, I think it's an even better, smoother story. I think it's an even better story. Because I think it's more organically told. I think I think it flows better. Even in my opinion, it has. You have to suspend your disbelief. These are comic books, but I feel like it's. I feel like it's more even more believable. It's set in more of a. I mean, it's set in the most corrupt Gotham City possible, and it's set in a vile, violent, terrible Gotham City, and it's Batman. Year one, starting out, and it's very believable how he's goes out and gets his ass kicked the very first time he goes out. He struggles. When he goes out dressed as a bat, he almost loses a kid,
right?
And he struggles to try and save the kid. And while he's trying to save the kid, the other kids start beating on him. And so it's realistic when it starts to venture into the territory of what would happen if somebody dressed up as a crime fighter with billions of dollars behind them and the training that's necessary for it. And what would the characters be like around him of a corrupt city, a corrupt government, a corrupt government in bed with crime families. And it's I think that there's something about year one that just made it even more special. As much as I was blown away by Dark Knight Returns, it feels like year one has a kind of a special place in my heart as making me fall in love with Batman more, the character of Batman. There's just the fact, just this is my favorite, I think, part in year one. Ladies and gentlemen, you have eaten well. Your feast is over.
I love that. I love that image of Batman coming into that room.
Yeah.
Silhouette. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And David Mazzucchelli, he is the unsung hero of this book.
Yeah.
It's a crime that he only did 4 issues of Batman.
Yeah.
He is unbelievable in his composition.
And that may be another reason why I like it so much, because there's because the art is so great too. And we get the beginnings of Catwoman, and you get the kind of you get I don't know, the criminal justice system is corrupt, and Batman and Harvey Dent are trying to clean it up. It's I just love it just seems, I don't know, on a personal level, it spoke to me more, as much as Dark Knight Returns shattered kind of the dark glass and cleared my vision as to what comic books could be. This kind of continued it and moved things forward. Things progressed. This is like, I showed you what comic books can be, and this is what they can be. Here's some more of what they can be. This is how great they can be. And I was
they both couldn't be more different. They're both very different stories. I think Dark Knight Returns is very mythological and very big, and Year One is very personal and realistic.
Right.
I think that Frank Miller touches upon the Bat God in Returns, and he does Batman in this book. Because I really enjoy, like you said, seeing him bumble around. Like his first night, he gets stabbed in the leg by Holly.
Yeah.
Holman's friend. The first time you showed on when he had the cape and cowl on, he almost killed a kid by accident.
Yeah.
And they beat him over the head.
Yeah.
And it was just really interesting to see him be a man who makes mistakes. And on top of that, I love this book because it almost focuses more on Gordon than Bruce Wayne. And Gordon is not perfect in this book either. He's not
at all.
He has an affair and he cheats on his wife. How did you feel about that when you first read that? Because you're used to Gordon being perfect at that point, right?
Well, of course, it humanizes him to a wonderful extent. And I mean, I was shocked by it. But I also felt like it made it a better story. It humanized him and got him. It pushed the story forward. It made it a more interesting story.
And Gordon actually has my favorite moment in the book. I don't know if you want to highlight me so I can show this art, but he is the one guy in Gotham who won't go on the take.
Right.
He won't join Flash, his partner, and everybody else, in collecting money and being corrupt. And they beat him up to kind of teach him a lesson, right? And you see him later. He's following Flash around, this really corrupt cop. And I love that picture of him in the car with the bat.
Yeah.
And he pulls him off the road. And this is James talking to himself. He's confronting Flash in the woods at this point. He's big, Green Beret training. It's been 15 years since I had to take out a Green Beret. Yeah. Even so, he deserves a handicap. So he throws Flash a bat. He says, I don't crack his skull. I don't crush his larynx. I don't break his ribs or punch my hand through his chest. I do just enough to keep him out of the hospital. I just love it's like he just makes Jim Gordon be on the same level with Batman.
Totally.
He's a tough guy who can take care of himself. He doesn't
absolutely.
Batman to save him.
Which you never saw before.
Scene. And then he ties up Flash and leaves him there naked in the snow.
Yeah.
I think that's my favorite moment of the entire book. How often was Gordon actually given an opportunity to show how tough he is? Not very much.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with that.
I'm just looking through this book, and I'm almost like distracted by how good the artwork is.
Yeah. It is really amazing.
I reread it this week. Did you reread it this week?
I did.
I was just sucked in, and I read it as quickly as I possibly could because I was like you said, the story just flows so much better. I think I agree with you that this story does flow a lot better than Dark Knight Strikes. I'm sorry, not Strikes Again. The Dark Knight Returns. But I do think that I still like Returns better because I think it has more memorable moments.
Well, it does, yeah.
So it's hard. I almost want to say they're equal. They're very equal.
Oh, sure.
I think Returns is slightly better for me just because of the moments, but the story doesn't flow as well. It's very much a bunch of big vignettes and different stories kind of colliding together, whereas this is just one overarching arc that goes along and reaches a climax. I think it is more cohesive.
So there are the 8 issues that made Frank Miller a legend.
Yes.
In 2 years, 1986 and 1988 or whatever.
And I don't want to underemphasize how important these books are.
No.
And even for Year One, it's pretty much serves as the basis of Batman Begins.
Right.
So much of this book is in like him taking on the SWAT team, which we didn't even talk about. That's a great moment in the book.
Oh yeah.
Where the SWAT team is this really big group of jerks who doesn't care about people. They bomb this abandoned building that Batman is in, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we found some dead homeless guys in it. Oh well, they're not important." It's like,
right.
What? Like, you're the cops. You're supposed to be the good guys, and they don't give a crap about anyone. And it's in contrast to Batman, who goes out of his way to save a cat.
Yeah.
He gets shot saving a cat. It just really shows how much better Batman is than the cops. He cares more about a cat's life than the cops do about homeless people's lives.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. And I just love that moment where he beats up that guy who shot the cat. You're the guy who tried to shoot the cat, and he punches him through a brick wall.
I know.
I love that moment.
Yeah.
And they also borrow the part where Batman has that frequency thing he touches, and all the bats show up.
Yeah,
that's from
that was
Batman
great.
Begins too. You can just tell Christopher Nolan and David S. Goyer, who wrote Batman Begins, really just took a lot of their inspiration from this book.
Yeah.
And again, my critique of this book and Dark Knight Returns, I'm not a huge fan of how they portrayed Catwoman as a prostitute. It was kind of just like, ugh. And especially in Dark Knight Returns, they
did not do her any favors.
Overweight, heavy prostitute. It was just like, wow. I mean, Frank Miller isn't known for treating women very well.
No.
Which is a big critique of him. I think him and Superman were kind of my big critiques. But again,
I think Selina is my biggest critique.
I don't want to make excuses for Frank, but it's really a symptom of the times back in the 80s, unfortunately.
I guess so, yeah. You wouldn't get away with it.
Again, I'm not making excuses for him, but it's just like the whole fridging thing and just women not being treated correctly. We could probably bring Faria on and talk to her about that, because she has a lot of passionate opinions about how women are portrayed in comics. But Frank Miller definitely didn't help with Selina Kyle and her portrayal here.
No, that's my big gripe, is how he portrayed Selina in both these books.
Yeah. But overall, again, classic books. Every book after year one in Dark Knight Returns is in the shadow of Frank Miller, and everyone pays homage to him to some degree.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, guys, we have to move into the crap section right now. This is the part of the show I'm not looking forward to, but we have to do it because we're honest comic book collectors who have to talk about something we don't really want to talk about.
This is called The Uneven Legacy of Frank Miller.
Yeah, I thought that was a very nice way to put it.
Yeah, I was arguing for a different title, but Taylor talked me down.
Well, you mentioned we don't want to be clickbaity.
Right.
So, all right, guys, it's time to move on probably to the roughest part of this, which is Dark Knight Strikes Again.
And what year was that published?
This is in 2001. It went from December 2001 to July 2002. And guys, please don't judge me for having this physical copy. I did not buy this. It's from the library. I even felt bad getting this and All-Star Batman and Robin from the library. I was hoping, when the librarian gave me these books, I was like, I hope she's not a Batman fan. I hope she's not like, what is this guy doing? I was hoping she was oblivious and she wouldn't judge me.
Well,
this is the part of the show that's going to be painful.
Well, I'll tell you what's painful is that everybody that read those first two books was so excited to get Strikes Again. I mean, everybody had it on their pull list. Everybody flocked to the comic book stores. Frank Miller was writing another Batman book. We could not wait to get our hands on it. And
let me ask the chat real quick. If you like it, please tell us in the tell us in the chat. I want to see that, and tell us why you like it if you do. All right, sorry, Jess. I wanted to hear that anyone does like it.
That's fine. But everybody that liked comic books and that liked Frank Miller's Batman flocked to the stores to pick up that first issue because it was such a big deal that Frank Miller was writing Batman again.
Right. And did you pick up the first issue off the stands?
I did.
All right. So tell us how you felt as you started flipping through it and started reading it. What was your immediate reaction? Did you vomit in the nearest trash can?
I was wildly disappointed. I was confused and confused. Yeah, Kristen O writes it. Such a letdown. I was confused and disappointed and didn't know what I was reading. I was like, this doesn't seem right.
I put in the chat, does anyone like The Dark Knight Strikes Again? And Blue G says, nope, we need root beer.
Boil it in root
I don't
beer.
want to ruin this. I'm not paying for this. I'm not giving the library money for ruining it.
The first issue was so weird and seemed so out of place. I said, okay, the second issue is going to make things right.
That's what Kevin Luther just asked. Anyone know if people at that time thought it would improve after the first issue?
I did. I said, okay, it's setting things up weird, but it'll get better after the second issue. And it got worse. And I said, this can't be happening. What is happening? This is the guy that made me get back into comics. He's making me want to get out of comics here.
That was the line we talked about before. I'm like, you have to say that in the show.
I wanted to leave comics after Batman Strikes Again. I mean,
Wow.
It was Dark Knight Strikes Again. Sorry?
Did you buy all 3 issues, or did you give up at some point?
I got all 3 because
wow.
I could have sworn that it was. Huh?
You really are optimistic.
I could have sworn it was going to be good.
The last issue, it must be good.
Yeah, this is going to tie it all together. This is going to make it better. And then I was just like, what happened? I don't get it. How does somebody lose it in that amount of time?
You know how you avoided Batman and Robin the movie?
Yeah.
I tried to avoid Dark Knight Strikes Again for a long time. And then 3 or 4 years ago, my friend was like, you, as a comic book fan, you have to experience how bad this is. And so he gave me the 3 issues, the original 3 issues. And I kept texting him like, dude, I can't do this. This is so bad. He said, no, keep going. He said, I did it. You have to do it. And so I punished myself. And eventually it was like a homework assignment I would skim, and I would dread reading it. And even if I did study it, I would have no idea what's going on. Can you tell me what happened in that book? Because I have no idea what happened. The story is nonsensical.
Are you asking me that question?
Can you help me out here? I have no idea what happened in that book.
I don't know.
I think every level of this book is terrible. The art, the writing, the characters, the story, it's all baffling to me.
No, I don't know what it was about.
And me and Jess were laughing before the show even started. I was reading some of the quotes about the book on the back. And this is actually one of the quotes they probably scraped from the bottom of the barrel because they couldn't find very many. This book is a startling, befuddling accomplishment. Wow, what high praise. A befuddling. Befuddling. I've never heard that being a praise before in my entire life.
Befuddling is correct.
But Jess, if you want to highlight me, I can go through some of this art to kind of show people just how far Frank Miller fell. And I just have no idea what was going on here. Were you really let down by the art initially as well? Or was it mainly the story that let you down?
It was the story. Joe Cool, we're just going over the Batman books that he wrote. We're not covering Sin City or Martha Washington. It's just we're just a Batman show, just so you know.
But again, like I said earlier in the show,
Martha Washington was a great book, though.
I just want to repeat what I said early on in the show for people who weren't here. I think Frank Miller took a steep decline in the late 90s, and he never recovered. It's like his career just kind of went off a cliff, and his art never went back to the way it was. And I think that shows in his independent work, which we're not covering today, but it's really very evident in Dark Knight Strikes Again. Like, I'm not sure what happened. I mean, I know at a certain point artists don't get better, but he wasn't even that old when this book came out. He was probably in his early 40s. And just like the way he drew Batman in the scene where he's beating up Superman, it just looks so stupid. Like, Batman looks like he has no muscles at all. He looks like he's an 8th grader. Like, this is one of the worst pictures of Batman I've ever seen.
You need to lift it up just a little bit. Yeah, there you go.
It looks terrible. He looks like he's like literally 14 years old. Like, he has no muscle definition whatsoever. And just the way, like, even the way women are drawn, obviously, he always draws women in not the best of ways. But I don't know. It's just the section on the back is right. It's befuddling. I have no idea what's going on here or what he was thinking. Just the art got progressively worse as it went on as well.
The art didn't make sense. It was hard to follow, and I never understood the story.
And Lex Luthor was this massive, chunky guy. He was like, I don't know, like, that's not what Lex Luthor looks like at all. Like, he would beat up Batman with his shirt off and everything, and he had like a bunch of rolls, and creases, and I don't know. It just looked really weird. And he cut like Batman cuts like a Zorro Z in Lex Luthor's face. I don't know.
It didn't make any. It was. I can't even tell you what a letdown it was.
And Carrie Kelly's wearing a Catwoman costume.
I don't know what that was about.
Or remember this scene? This was Wonder Woman and Superman are having sex as they descend to Earth, and it was just like, this is creepy.
Yeah.
And it's just like, come on. It was just really weird.
Yeah.
It just like, again, like there's a bunch of detours and a bunch of random subplots that went nowhere. And the only thing I remember about the end is that Robin is a villain and Batman kicks him into a volcano or something.
Or something.
Yeah, whatever that big fire pit was, Batman killed Robin. And let me try to find that scene for you. Do you remember reading that, Jess?
I remember reading it, but I don't remember knowing what it was about.
But like, were you stunned whenever Robin ended up being a bad guy and Batman killed him?
Yeah, I don't know what it meant.
It's crazy. Here's Lex Luthor with his shirt off. Look how good he looks. What in the world? When has Lex Luthor ever looked like that? He looks like he gained 500 pounds. It's just, I don't know. I'm all for different. I'm all for trying new things. But there gets to be a point where it's just too much. And I'm trying to find the scene where Batman kills Robin. Where is that? Yeah, here it is. He throws Robin into a volcano. And so Batman, who's loved and raised Dick Grayson, you think that would crush him, right? You think that would kill him. Here's what he says. So long, boy wonder. Like, okay, the kid you raised since he was a little boy, you murdered him, and you're like, who cares? That's not Batman. I'm sorry. That's just garbage. And it's just like Frank Miller, who did such a good job with year one and Returns. I'm sorry, man, but like, what were you thinking? This really bums me out.
I don't know. I feel like we've spent enough time on it.
Yeah, as you can tell, I'm starting to get mad, and that's probably the point to move on. I just get frustrated. So let me look at some of the comments. Carl N. Maybe Frank thought it was Batman versus the Blob or a horrible version of Kingpin.
Yeah, it did sort of remind me of Kingpin a little bit.
And the Wheels 311. He butchered my Wonder Woman. That's a no-no. And Luthor turned into Kingpin. Doc Collector. He did too much coke. That's probably true.
Well, we don't know that.
I don't know. That's just what he said. Maybe it's true. But something definitely happened to him with his health in recent years too. And
yeah,
I'm glad he's okay. I mean, I harbor no ill feelings towards the man. Again, he created two of the best Batman books ever. I love Sin City. I love 300. I have no hard feelings towards him. I'm just bummed out that his legacy is kind of has these black marks on it. I wish it didn't. But we're about to move on to another black mark, which is All-Star Batman and Robin. And again, I don't own this. This is from the library.
I don't own it.
Did you pick this up when it came out, Jess?
Yes.
So what was your thoughts when it first came out, when you first started reading it?
The famous line is, what are you, retarded or something? I'm the goddamn Batman. To me, that was funny, but it was just more out of character Batman. It was not in character Batman. It just sounded like it sounded like an avenging angel type thing.
That's probably one of the most famous panels in comics.
Yeah.
Not for a good reason. And like you said, that Batman would never say that. And also remember the context of it. He's saying this to a young man who just saw his parents get murdered. Like,
yeah.
Would you really want to say that to a kid who just saw his parents get murdered? Probably not. And he keeps saying that throughout the whole book too. He's referring himself to that. He loves that title for himself. And the first 4 issues are pretty much him and Dick Grayson escaping the police in the Batmobile. And so the plot really moves forward very slowly.
Yeah, I have to admit that I liked it looking at it because of the Jim Lee art.
Yeah, look at this.
It's really good.
And Jess, I remember when this book came out. It came out initially 2000. I believe it was 2005 was the first year it came out.
Okay.
So I was like 14 or 15. I remember being at Borders. Rest in peace, Borders. I remember being at Borders, I saw the first issue and I was blown away by the art. I was like, I have to get this. And it said #1. I was like, okay, this is a good jumping on point. And I took it home, and even as a 14-year-old or 15-year-old, I was like, this isn't good. Like this is bad writing. The art is gorgeous. The art is great, but it's just not. The story is going nowhere, and Batman would never treat people like this. I understand this is a reimagining. This is the All-Star line, so it is like a reboot, but reboots can only go so far. You can only push things so far. Like Dark Knight Returns, Frank Miller really pushed Batman, and it really helped. Strike Again went way too far, and again, he went way too far in this book as well. And I think even like I think the way they even like objectify women in this book is like really like there's so many butt shots, and there's so many just like scantily clad women walking around. And it's just like I just feel like they're really trying to market on Jim Lee's art in that way. And again, just kind of showing how Frank Miller really doesn't present women in the best of light, unfortunately. But I just was disappointed when it first came out. And in comparison to All-Star Superman, this just really is disappointing.
And unfinished.
Right. So this has 10 issues. And
11, I think.
Oh, is it 11? Okay. Yeah. So 10 or 11 issues, something like that. And they were promising another follow-up to it, which never came. And so this Absolute and the paperback is incomplete. And so if you are interested and you still want to get this if you're a completist, just remember this isn't a completed story. Now, Jess, do you think this is worth the pickup just for Jim Lee's artwork?
No.
No. Okay. No, you're really ready for that question.
Yeah, no. We showed you the best part, and that's I'm the goddamn Batman. That's it.
Yeah, and did you get the whole series when it came out, or did you?
I got it in floppies. Yeah.
So you did collect. Remember the whole Green Lantern scene where they're all dressed in yellow in that yellow room? But that was stupid too. I did not like. It was just like, okay, they're all like in yellow in that yellow room trying to corner Green Lantern and play on his weakness.
Yeah.
But anyway, I don't like to bash on books. I don't like to be negative, so I don't want to dwell on it too long. I like being positive. So let's move on to another book, which I'm not going to like again. So at least we'll end on somewhat of a positive note with The Last Crusade.
Now, Last Crusade, I didn't hate. I have it. So I still have it.
It'll be somewhat of a positive note. At least we're not ending on a total bummer.
Right.
But actually, before we get there, we have to go to the Master Race, which again, I don't have it. I almost bought it. I was like, I should just buy it. I'm a Batman fan. I'm really glad I didn't buy it. So to set up the background for this came out initially in 2015 and it was finished in 2017. And it was 9 issues, but they weren't exactly on time. And there was a lot of delays with it. And I remember reading the first 4 issues in floppies and single issues. And I thought it was mediocre. I thought, hey, it's fine. It's just okay. It's nowhere near as bad as Strikes Again. But eventually I got out of the singles game as I started following you and Riley and Lou and everybody else. And I just wanted to go strictly collected editions, which I am now. And so I just never ended up picking it up. And so I decided, well, I remember thinking it was okay, but I should probably read it for this Frank Miller episode. And man, if it wasn't for this episode, I would not have finished. I did not like it. I just did not. Can you see it at all with the screen? Or is it hard to see?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. The art by Andy Kubert is good. I wouldn't say I love it. I think his artwork with Grant Morrison, with that run, is better. You can tell he's trying to imitate old school Frank Miller, which makes sense. And I think the artwork is probably the best part of this. Well, mine is Frank Miller's backup artwork. So pretty much this story, it begins with Carrie Kelly running around as Batman and telling people that Bruce Wayne is dead. And it turns out that Bruce Wayne isn't dead. And there's this whole storyline that happens with the bottled city of Kandor and how the Atom actually makes them life-size and they start killing people and trying to take over the world. So the main villains of this book are the Kandorians. And that's a really cool, interesting concept. I don't know if you think that sounds interesting. I thought it sounded really cool. But the villains made no sense. They had no motivation. You had no idea why they were doing what they were doing. They just seemed to be random. And I just think it didn't really go anywhere. And Bruce Wayne was barely in this book.
Oh, really?
Not a ton. I think Superman was in it a lot. Carrie Kelly was a big focus. Wonder Woman was in it a lot. Bunch of random backup features about Hal Jordan. and about other heroes. The Atom was in it a lot as well. Again, like this artwork's pretty solid. I thought the story that was around the artwork was very haphazard. Like look at this Frank Miller Superman. That might be the worst picture of Superman I've ever seen. What do you think about that? Okay, I'll take your sound of disgust as your opinion.
Whoa.
But it's just like some of his art was okay. Like this is Frank Miller. It's fine. It's passable, but it's nowhere near as good as it was when he was younger. You know? Again, I don't want to be negative. I just thought that it was very disappointing. Compared to the Strikes Again, it wasn't a train wreck, but I still wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah.
I would like to hear other people's opinions in the chat. I just didn't love it. I wanted to like it. I went in, I'm like, I'll at least think it's fine. I'll at least be walking away from it saying that was decent. It was at least better than Dark Knight Strikes Again. But I just really didn't enjoy it, Jess. And I'm not sure. I'll be interested.
I haven't read it.
I want to see. I actually would be interested in having you read it and see if you disagree with me.
That is way on the back burner now.
And here's Batman being beat up by Lex Luthor. There's the
what?
There's
again?
It's like a retrospective looking back.
Oh.
And like there's the big fat Kingpin Lex Luthor again. And the ending, I think the ending was good in some ways. Like it would have been good. It would have been a good ending if it was from a different book or if it had a better story.
Huh.
The ending wasn't earned. I didn't feel I really felt the emotional weight at the end of Returns. Like we talked about, like the good death to a good life.
Yeah.
And they kept trying to force the good life motif again. And it's like you're trying to retread the same theme from Returns. And the way they end it, I think, is decent, but it didn't hit me hard because I wasn't connected to the story.
Yeah.
So that's my opinion on that book.
Okay. Well, I haven't read it, so I have to accept your opinion.
Right. Blue G says, tell me about the ending. I never finished it. What do you want to tell? I don't want to say anything about the ending, Blue G, because I don't want to spoil it for anybody who didn't read it, because it's somewhat of a newer book. But we can talk about it offline at some point. I'll give you my opinions like on via Messenger or something. All right, do you want to move on to our last book?
Sure. I read it this week and I didn't hate it.
I reread it this week as well, just to remind myself. I haven't read it in 3 years. So why don't you start us off? I've been talking a lot, so I want to hear what you think about it.
Well, it was it's a Joker story with Batman and Robin. Jason Todd as Robin, and it's set right before Jason Todd, the Jason Todd incident with the Joker. So it's called The Last Crusade, and it's I'm going through it because I read it.
Because in the Dark Knight universe, Jason Todd was still murdered, but we're not exactly sure how it happened. And so Frank Miller and Brian Azzarello, who wrote this book with art by John Romita Jr., fill in the blanks of how Jason Todd died and what led Bruce to retire before Dark Knight Returns.
Oh, right.
This is a prequel of sorts to Dark Knight Returns.
Yeah. Why don't you just tell it?
I kind of already did. But
okay, you just told it.
But what did you think about the art?
I thought this is actually the best JR art I've seen, because I'm not a big JR fan at all, and I like this the best I've seen of his. I'm not a big fan of his, and I liked this.
So I'm of the opinion that his Marvel stuff is better than his DC work.
Okay.
Like, I love Man Without Fear by him and Frank Miller.
Well, yeah, that's good.
That's great. I love his Spider-Man work. I think he draws a great Spider-Man. But for some reason, his Spider-Man and Batman, his Superman and Batman aren't as good as I would like. I thought his art was good in this story. I just think his Batman, like the cowl just looks very weird. I don't know what it is. Like his nose looks very flat. The ears are very bulky. I don't know if you can see it down there. I don't know. Overall, I thought he did a great job. I thought it was a very well-drawn book. And like you said, he can be very hit or miss. I don't always love his art. Sometimes it can be too blocky. It can be too scratchy.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think it was really good. I think whoever inked and colored this book really helped him.
Yeah.
I think
so
that's the
too.
big difference with him is who inks and who colors him.
Yeah.
I don't think as comic book fans we really give enough credit to inkers and colorists. They make the pencils really pop, or they can make them look worse.
Right.
And so I think he really was bolstered up by the inks and the colors.
Right. I agree. So I say to my friends at Bat Force Radio and Tom King that I still think Tom King is my favorite Batman author and writer. And if Tom King, you can like Frank Miller all you want, but I think we've made the case that you're a better Batman writer than your beloved Frank Miller. And peace and love, but I like Tom King better than Frank Miller. And I love Bat Force Radio. So peace and love to Bat Force Radio.
Well, in 2 weeks, we'll be reviewing the fourth deluxe edition of Batman by Tom King. And I think that'll be an interesting review because a lot of people, this is the part of the series where people have a lot of diverse opinions about. And so that'll be an interesting video to see what people think about it. I love it, to kind of give you a preview of what I thought about it.
I haven't read it yet.
So yeah, you'll read it soon. But just to recap, this video to recap this book, I thought Last Crusade was solid.
Yeah.
I thought it was decent. I didn't love the ending. I don't want to get too much into the ending, but we all kind of know how it ends because it's all about the death of Jason Todd. But I thought the ending was very anticlimactic and very small for such a big moment.
Yeah, it was small.
Like the Joker was barely in this book. He should have been the main villain, but they kind of went off with subplots with Poison Ivy and Killer Croc.
Killer Croc, yeah.
You never even see Batman and Joker on the same page, on the same panel. And he's not even the one who kills Jason Todd, really. I mean, he's not the one who does it himself. I thought it was very removed and very distant. It was a very strange ending. And you didn't even get to see Batman's response to it, which I didn't like. Like, I want to see the emotional upheaval that Bruce experiences that makes him quit. It just ends abruptly. And it's like, well, how did Bruce respond?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, he quit, but like, what was his emotional response? You know?
That's a good point.
I was bummed out by that.
Point. Yeah.
I think that's what rubbed me the wrong way the first time. I remember not liking this the first time, but I ended up enjoying it somewhat the second time. I just thought the ending was very disappointing. I think it could have been like a couple more issues.
Yeah.
I delved into it more. I thought this was very slim. I had the original like Prestige book that came out. I think you have the hardcover. I just wish it had been a little bit more epic, a little bit more big in a way.
Yeah.
I thought it was very small and anticlimactic at the end.
That's a good point. That's a really good point.
That was my major letdown from that book, even though it was a much better than Strikes Again and All-Star Batman and Robin and Master Race. I'm glad we were able to end this video on somewhat of a good note.
Yeah. I don't even know what books I'm going to put in the thumbnail. Well, I know I won't be putting Strikes Again in the thumbnail because I don't own it.
I can send you a picture of the books if you want.
No.
I guess just put Strikes Again in Year 1 and Last Crusade in it. That's good enough.
I don't know. I don't have Strikes Again.
Oh, I'm sorry. Put Returns Year 1 and Last Crusade in.
Okay. Well, I have the complete Frank Miller Batman.
So I think overall, to recap the entire video,
yeah,
Frank Miller, arguably he only did 8 solid, great issues of Batman, but those 8 issues are extraordinary and they're transcendent, and it's affected every single Batman writer and artist who's come after him, and you can't argue that, and you can't take that away from him. And I don't think that these horrible books that we discussed tarnish that. Obviously, there are black marks on his bibliography, but they don't in any way nullify his importance.
Oh, no, there's no way you can nullify those first 2 books.
Let me ask you this. This is a good question, Jess. If you could put 4 people on the Mount Rushmore of Batman, who would it be?
Batman?
Is there 4 on Mount Rushmore? I can't remember. Is it 4 or 5?
There's 4.
Okay, then 4. I couldn't remember.
Batman.
You can only put 4.
Of Batman.
About that too.
Holy smoke. Well, I guess, unfortunately, you're going to have to put 2 of them are going to have to be Bob Kane and Bill Finger because they invented him. Yeah. So there goes half of Mount Rushmore right there.
You can't skip Bill Finger.
No.
Have you ever seen that documentary?
I haven't, and I really need to.
You have Hulu?
I do.
Watch it. It's great. It makes you really not like Bob Kane, though.
Yeah, no, I have
Because
heard
even though
that.
there's some awkward history with Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, Stan Lee was still an upstanding guy. I mean, he did some
Yeah,
things that weren't great, but overall, he was a great man. Like Bob Kane really did some underhanded stuff.
yeah,
Bill Finger. And
that's what I heard.
it kind of ruins your view of Bob Kane, but it really shows you how important Bill Finger was and how much he did. All right, so Bob Kane, Bill Finger, they have
Boy,
to be up
that
there.
takes
You're
up
right.
half of it.
How about I'll give you 6?
There's 6. Okay.
Wait, that way it's not going to be too much of a tooth pull.
Let's see.
Highlighter says Adams and Aparo.
Aparo and Neil Adams.
Then
Jim Aparo did a
you don't want
lot
to
of
live
good
off
stuff.
O'Neill though either.
Dennis O'Neill and Adams recreated him for the 70s, late 60s, early 70s.
Yeah.
Aparo was part of that Walking in the Sunshine Batman era, though. But he was a great artist, and it's not his fault. But it is hard to argue that Miller doesn't belong there because of those 2 stories that changed the direction of Batman in general.
There's no way you can keep him off there.
I don't think you can.
I think Bill Finger, Bob Kane, Frank Miller. I think Adams should be up there, and O'Neill.
Yep.
The last one though, that's a hard one. You almost want to go with a modern person though. Highlighter says Bruce Timm. I mean, Bruce Timm is great, but I wouldn't put him on the Mount Rushmore though. I love that animated series and I love Mad Love and their comics, but I don't know if I'd put him up there on the Rushmore. And someone else just said Snyder and Capullo. That's hard to get too.
Snyder and Capullo and Tom King are the modern ones.
I asked myself a hard question. I can't even answer myself.
Yeah, what'd you answer that? What'd you ask that question for?
I don't know. I'm sorry. I thought it was a good question. I think it's a good question, but it's hard
to
answer.
Okay, so there's 5 faces on Mount Rushmore.
Joe just said Adams, Breyfogle, and Lee.
Oh, there's a lot of people that love Breyfogle.
It's too hard. Batman has too many good creators. If we were asking this about like Daredevil, that'd be easy. Or, I don't know, Captain America. They don't have as many classic runs, even though they do have good runs. There's just too much with Batman. It goes back too far. But all I have to say, Frank Miller does belong there. I don't think anyone can argue that.
Yeah, and then that takes me back to Tom King's comments that I had pre-Alzheimer's, or what he said, not naming Frank Miller and saying that Tom King was a better writer. Tom King's not on the Rushmore, but Frank Miller is. So that's an interesting juxtaposition there. Maybe Tom King's right and I'm wrong.
Well, I think that there are people.
I'm not saying he's right about pre-Alzheimer's. I do not have that. But
yeah, he might disagree if he saw your video when you ordered those books on pain pills.
That was pain pills, not Alzheimer's.
That's true. But yeah, I mean, I think there's some, like, there are just some artists, some filmmakers who have made a lot of stinkers, but they have 2 or 3 gems that just really solidify them as some of the most important directors, writers of all time. And even though there are some people who are more consistent and come out with really good material, they're just these people who made these classics that stand above everything else, really overshadow everybody, even though some of their bibliography or filmography isn't astounding.
Yeah.
So, and also Tom King, I think it's really early. It's hard to say because his run's not over yet. So I love what I've read so far. It's really up there for me. I'm just going to wait until we get to the end of his run to really talk about him being one of the best.
Yeah, that's fair.
I'm right there with you, though. I think he's great.
Yeah, that's fair. And Snyder so far has withstood the test of time, and his New 52 run has held up.
Right. I think if Tom King sticks to the landing, it could be a really memorable book that has a lot of ramifications going forward.
Right. I agree with that.
But overall, Frank Miller, we love you. Thank you so much for all you did for Batman. I'm sorry for the negative words. I doubt you'll ever watch this, but if you do, I'm so sorry. You're a great guy. You see, I've heard a lot of nice things about you. You've helped a lot of young creators, and you've really impacted my life in a positive way. But some of your books haven't been great.
I echo those words, and you changed my life forever back in 1986 for the positive. So that's what I would like to focus on. The
Blue
positive
G.
impact you had on me back in the mid 80s.
Blue G, he may be watching. You're right. He might be one of the 23 people right now watching. Can you imagine? I feel you'll be hearing from him in the comments, though.
Yeah. Well, this is my third show of the day, and I'm a bit worn out.
I bet. I was talking to you last night. Like you're like the CNN of comic book YouTube. You're 24/7 at this point. You're like 7-Eleven.
Yeah, exactly. So let's see. In 2 weeks, we're going to have Baturdays in the Batcave. We're going to be reading this book, reviewing this book, and did we decide if it was going to be wait, what day is that?
That is going to be August 10th.
And did I say there was a problem with August 10th?
No, that's going to be in September.
Oh. And
you're
okay,
a peek behind the curtain right now.
Yeah, right. We're talking. So is it going to be live, this review?
Let's end the video by asking the chat.
Okay.
For Absolute Black Mirror, we decided to do a pre-recorded video. It was about 30 minutes, and I think some people were kind of confused about it not being live. Would you guys like us to do a live review and hear your comments, or would you like us to do a pre-recorded review? If you have any thoughts about that.
Yeah, actually, I'd be interested if people would like a live review.
Right, because you said you've never really done that before, right?
Well, I do a live review show with Kristen, but for individual books, I've usually done pre-recorded.
All right, looks like live is the way to go. We have 3 people saying live. Live, please. Love the live shows. We'll give it a try, okay?
Okay,
we'll see how it goes.
That sounds fine.
You all need to come ready with your thoughts and your questions and your opinions.
Yeah, so all you guys out there that want it live, this is the book we're reviewing in 2 weeks. Batman.
We'll do it live.
We'll do it live. I'll write it myself, and we'll do it live. The whole thing sucks.
Oh, man. That's funny.
Okay, so thank you for watching, and thank you all the people in the chat. We appreciate all your comments, and thank you to the viewers. And peace and love. Peace and love.
See you guys. See you in 2 weeks.